Welcome to Watch Symposium. I'm Austin. All right, so I'm getting ready to put away the Orient. Before I did, I thought I would just give a comparison between the two. Now, I'm not going to compare a $170 watch to a multi-thousand-dollar Rolex. That's not really what this is about. It's just to show them side by side so you can do things like compare the finish on the dial, the movement of the second hand, the crowns. Now let's take a look. Obviously, the crown of the Rolex is more narrow. It's thinner, and I do prefer that, I think. Now, something like a sub or the modern GMTs with a triplock dial, they've got a fatter crown, and that's nice too. But you can see how the crown guards really are flush to the crown. I mean, there's not a lot of space between the crown and those crown guards, whereas on the Orient there is. And the Orient sticks out quite a bit more than the Rolex crown. So I think the Orient crown is a little less protected. Looking at the second hands, to my eye, they look kind of identical in the sense that, the Rolex doesn't look any more smooth to me. Maybe just slightly. Actually, now that I think about it, I think it is a little bit more smooth, whereas on the left, yeah, you can see it's a little more jerky. Now, it's an interesting thing because, the dial of the Orient and the dial of the Rolex, the finish, you could say, they're both beautiful. And that's the thing about watches these days. I mean, it's, if you're, Vostok is an exception, okay? Because I guess, I don't know what they're working with over there factory-wise, but aside from Vostok, pretty much any watch these days has a nice finish on the dial. I mean, I guess it's hard to screw up a dial these days. And, that's the one thing about Rolex. These, this is not a hard dial to do. The difficulty comes with guilloche dials, and I forget the term for it, but the dials where the metal is I guess it's like machine turning is maybe what it is, but the patterns like on Archie's World Time, right? Look at that center ring, and that's pretty spectacular. And Rolex doesn't really do that, at least on their sports watches. And I think it would kind of look funny on a sports watch, but because their watches are, their watch faces are so simple, it doesn't really set them apart from cheaper brands. Because, really, I mean, if you didn't know anything about a watch, and I were to put these two in front of you and say, well, if you didn't know anything about brands, you wouldn't look at the Rolex and say, wow, look at the finish of that dial, and look at the and this is less quality. In fact, I mean, this could fool people. I mean, it looks just as nice, and I guess it's just that painted dials are just maybe not that hard to pull off. I mean, I think you really would have to screw up a dial, a simply painted dial to for it to look bad. So I think it's very easy to look at less expensive pieces and say, oh, it's got a spectacular dial and the finish is wonderful, and I mean, it's really, I think it's hard to screw up these days, with factories and whatnot. So That's sort of something to credit really high-end watches with. I mean, you can't pull off that, the guilloche and the machine turning. You can't really fake that, and that's a Patek kind of thing. So I don't even know if, I think maybe Rolex might do that in their Solidi line perhaps, but yeah. All right. Well, one thing I failed to mention in the Orient video that I think I should is you cannot wind this Orient. So, in fact, in the instructions, I think it says something like wear it 8 hours a day, which I thought that's kind of weird. It's like a full-time job keeping this thing running. It's got a 40-hour power reserve, but that's sort of bit of a pain in the ass there. You can sort of spin it around, kind of turn it, and you can hear the. See if I can do it. You can hear the. Can you hear that? You can hear the what do you call it? The counterweight spinning. It's funny. I would never do this to a Rolex, but it's not a big deal doing it to this. I mean, if something were to happen to it, I don't think I'd be too upset. It's funny. I wouldn't even shake my Rolex like that, even though I know it could take it. It could probably take it more than the Orient, but yeah, I wouldn't do that. It's amazing. We just the abuse we give these watches, we respect less. One other thing that I really wanted to show you guys, and this is kind of the whole reason, were the clasps. Look at the difference in size. Now, and that's so thin down here. Here, let me turn it the right way. Look at that. I think that looks so much better now. It's scratched. This watch has never been, well, it's been polished, but since I've had it, it's never been polished. Yeah, I mean, you can see there's scratches and wear, but the Orient's almost worse. And the thickness is really surprising. This is a better feeling clasp, but the thickness and that taper is just so much nicer. Again, I know it irritates people when I compare two completely differently priced watches, but it's just kind of worth doing sometimes just to see. But the Orient has 22. The leg width is 22, whereas the Explorer 2 is 20, and so here on the Explorer 2, it starts at 20 and then it gradually tapers down to this, which I couldn't even tell you what it was width-wise, but the Orient starts at 22, and it really doesn't taper at all. So, I mean, it might taper a couple millimeters, maybe 2 millimeters at most. So you've got a really thick clasp there, and I think that's one of the reasons, when you see a Rolex in somebody's wrist and you don't quite know, it's far away, but you think that's a Rolex, and you look closer and it is. And you would never mistake this for a Rolex, that straight band. And I think that's one of the reasons it always puzzles me. I'll see a watch, I'll say, bam, that's a Rolex. I don't even know what it is, because the whole oyster bracelet pattern is really not that unique, but I think it's this taper. I think this taper, when you see it, it's just very characteristic of a Rolex. So you'll see this and just that much, and you'll think, okay, that's a Rolex, and sure enough it is. You'd never make that mistake with this. Anyway, yeah, so just a little bit of a comparison between the two. I gotta say, I mean, this is, it's an okay watch, but it is fantastic having the Explorer 2 on the wrist. I mean, really makes me remember why I like this so much. I mean, it just, looking down at my wrist, just sort of a turn on, and is just it's throughout the day when you check the time, it's just makes you very appreciative to be doing it on a quality timepiece. I like the contrast, by the way, that white dial and the black painted, white gold indices, that are painted black, and also the hands. This is a very similar watch to the GMT Master 2. In fact, the movement is the same. Dial is different. The white gold hour markers are painted on this, and the hands are painted black, and as of course the bezel as well. Very similar watches though, and they feel completely the same to wind them. Anyway, just some more, watch porn, and thank you for watching. Take care. See you next time.